Hi there, it's Denise Eckert from Balance Me Coaching, and I love coming on here to share different tips and practical ideas to help you reduce the stress in your life. And today I've got Jacky Francis Walker, who's a psychotherapist and a burnout coach for 25 years. And our topic today is the magic key to heal burnout. So good afternoon, Jacky.
Good afternoon to you, Denise.
So can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. I specialize in working with burnout, and I particularly work with successful, driven women or high achieving professionals. And they are particularly the people who expect to drive themselves really hard and are often really surprised when all of a sudden, out of the blue, they start to experience burnout. There's a sense of shock. This can't be me. How is this happening? You know, I can usually handle everything. And so hopefully we catch them early enough, but very often people will come to me when they've actually reached rock bottom and they've gone off work, and then we have to start to rebuild them again. So over those 25 years, I've had a really, really great opportunity to figure out what works, and particularly what works for busy people, high achievers, and for people who are trying to work as well as recover from burnout at the same time, which is a pretty tall order, as I'm sure you'll imagine. So I've actually developed my own unique model of working with burnout, which really takes account of what's happening in the body, as well as the emotions in the mind. And it seems to be really, really helpful for people.
Well, it's really important because a lot of people, as you say, don't understand that they are sliding into burnout. And the thing is, I find with burnout, it can be very gradual. And then when it hits hard. And I know with even doing this podcast, I've interviewed many women who've landed in the hospital with some very serious health issues. And, you know, it's not an easy thing to get out of burnout, but with the right guidance, it works.
Absolutely. Yeah, you've got it. And what I find is that depending where you are in the stress curve, so are you experiencing stress or overload or burnout, what you need in terms of guidance is different at each stage. So what you might need from stress could be something fairly general, something fairly self-helpy perhaps, a bit of time out just to recharge. That might be all you need. But when you're starting to get into the stages of overwhelm or overload, then a different part of the brain starts to come into play. And what works for stress probably won't work all that well with overwhelm. And it certainly won't work when you actually enter burnout proper. And in fact, what I do find is very often the things that people think they should try that are really good for stress can actually make burnout worse. So it's really important to get guidance from people like yourself or myself or others about what actually to do.
Now, can you give us some examples of what things that people can do what they do for stress that can make burnout worse?
Yeah, the really, really obvious one is with stress, you expect to be able to take a couple of days out or a week out, and you should be able to bounce back. And so when people know that their bodies will do that fairly reliably, it tempts them to push on. I'll just get this job finished. I'll just push on for another 2 weeks and this project comes to an end and then I can rest. And, you know, up to a point that will work when it's just stress. But when we get to burnout, we no longer have the resilience in our bodies that will allow us to do that. So every time we just push on, we just try and finish the project, what we're doing is we're actually reducing and reducing and reducing the resilience in our body and pushing it further into burnout that way. So, and it's not intuitive. It's not the sort of thing you would expect to be the case. And so, you know, I do find a lot of people who soldier on thinking they're giving in or they're being weak if they don't actually just stop and start to do some of the things that will be restorative when they're in burnout.
The magic key to heal burnout. So what do we mean by awe?
That's a really good question. Awe is a very, very complex emotion, and it can be difficult to define, but I think we all know when we have felt awe. Yeah, you put your hand on your heart. Absolutely. Often it's about being in the presence of something that's vastly bigger than us, and which takes us out of the normal everyday experience and makes us go, oh, yeah. So, I mean, when you look up at the stars, we often feel awe, or we look at a beautiful sunset or a beautiful nature scene. These are all things that fairly typically we recognize as being experiences that can produce awe. But the interesting thing is that unlike a lot of other emotions or feelings, awe can actually be a negative as well as a positive feeling. And this goes right the way back to the very roots of the word, because the word awe comes from Old English, egg. And it used to mean, right at the beginning, fear, terror, reverence. So awe, but from a fairly negative place. And it grew up with kind of religious and spiritual experiences, you know, God as the kind of avenging father, for example. And so they will be in awe of God, but also at the same time probably fearful about not doing what they expect God will want them to do. So that kind of religious sense was around for quite a few centuries. And it wasn't until the late 1700s that a philosopher actually decided that awe was actually a secular experience as well, an everyday non-religious experience, and that we could feel awe in the small moments, in the tiny little experiences of life, as well as in the big kind of meaning of life experiences too. And that then started to shift the understanding of awe as being positive, a positive experience rather than positive or negative, depending on where we're coming from. So, things like music, art, astonishing nature, even seeing people doing something compassionate towards other people that's kind of unexpected or bigger than one might expect, can trigger feelings of awe in us.
Now, how does the experience of awe benefit us?
Good, yeah, excellent question. What happens is, because it's a feeling of being in the presence of something vast and bigger than us, it actually shrinks our feeling of who we are. We start to feel the smallness or the humility of who we are. And it takes us entirely out of the everyday concerns that we might have, because suddenly we're in the awe experience and we are focused on that. So the great thing is that it means that our minds stop being busy in the way that it can when we're stressed, and starts to relax and just be present with what we're experiencing right now. There's been a lot of studies about what awe does to the body, and apparently out of all of the positive emotions we might feel, happiness, resilience, and so on and so forth, the only one that reduces the levels of inflammation in our body is awe, which I never knew until I started to look into it. And it also starts to trigger our feelings of wonder and curiosity. So it starts to bring our creative brain into play rather than our fairly kind of stressed and overworked left brain. We start to be able to open up to possibilities and start to see more of the bigger picture in our own lives too. And there's a great experiment done by a chap at the University of California, and he found that we only have to experience awe for 60 seconds for it to have an effect, a measurable effect. So
Wow.
it's actually pretty powerful stuff.
Wow, yeah, it's almost, I mean, I love teaching gratitude in my practice too, where you do get that sense of awe as well, because you're You got that heartwarming feeling. So now, how does awe help with stress or burnout? How does that intertwine there?
Okay, so I've already mentioned part of it. What's different about awe, again, to a lot of the other positive emotions that might help with stress and burnout, is that awe seems to trigger both of our both branches of our nervous system at the same time. So, quick little recap: we've got the sympathetic nervous system, which is the flight or fight system. It helps us act in the world. If we get too triggered by stress, and it starts us to be, want to run away, shut down. We've got the parasympathetic nervous system, which helps us relax and heal and recharge. So usually one's mostly active and the other one's mostly shut down, and then they'll switch over in life. And that's what things like breathing exercises try and help us do, to switch from the flight or fight system to the relaxation system. But awe actually gets both branches of the nervous system to work at the same time. So it's like the whole body is working in tandem with each other. So it has a much, much bigger effect. And it's also well known for calming the system. Another study found that, I said 60 seconds of awe was found to be the minimum amount of time that people needed. But actually, another study found that even that is quite a lot. And we probably only just need about 10 to 15 seconds, so long as we do it kind of a few times during the day, punctuate our day with experiences of awe. So in this particular study, people asked to just pause, take stock, appreciate the magic in little things, and just to take 10 to 15 seconds to put their full attention on what's happening and just kind of breathe with it, and to do that 3 to 5 times a day. And after 21 days, which is the length of time that it often takes to create a new habit, they found that people's stress and anxiety had significantly reduced just by doing that over a period of 3 weeks. So you can see that awe's got a lot to it. Gratitude and flow and mindfulness and all these other beautiful things, that all essential things to do, but for some reason awe seems to trump the lot. So I see it as being one of the master mind states to try and make sure that we have.
Now that you're talking about studies, I understand there was a study in regards to selfies that people take.
Oh yes.
Can you comment on that?
Absolutely. Now, this is really, really fun. They asked a group of people to take one 15-minute walk a week over 8 weeks. And one group were just told to go for a walk and see what happens. And the other group were taught how to cultivate awe during their walk. So try and walk somewhere new, because novelty is helpful for encountering awe rather than same old, same old. And paying attention to the details, so mindset, making the effort to notice things with a fresh pair of eyes, and not to use your phone. Phones aren't very good for awe usually, but they could use their phone to take some selfies along their walk, just to document where they went. So what they found is that over the 8 weeks, the people who were just told to walk found that they were thinking about everyday things. What am I going to have for dinner? How am I going to solve this problem? Whereas those who have been told how to cultivate awe were thinking about the beauty of the leaves and the colours of the greens. And the selfies, they found that those in the awe group, their selfies started out as being ordinary selfies of themselves with a little bit of background, and then gradually over the 8 weeks, it was less and less their face and more the background. So something about their sense of themselves shifted, and what was important shifted during that week. And of course, in the other group, they just took ordinary selfies throughout the whole experiment.
So rather than just, I know myself, I live across the street from a lake, and when I do my selfies, it's like, this is my beautiful view. This is the fountain. I'm in the picture, but I am off to the side somewhere, but
Sure.
yeah, it's fun. So people that are looking to experience awe, and, you mentioned stars and mountain, are there other practices that can come into effect here?
Absolutely. And we don't always have access to the big awe experiences. We can't go and stand on a mountain and watch a sunset every day. But I think there's 5 tips that I would give. So the first is, awe is a mental attitude. So if we gear ourselves up to look for moments of awe in our life, we're more likely to find it. We're giving our brain a target for which to seek, and then it's obedient. It will go and seek it for us. So we will start to notice those moments which otherwise we would just overlook. And we can also keep an awe journal, a bit like a gratitude journal. So every day, perhaps at the end of the day, just go through, what are some moments in the day where I've actually experienced awe. Combine it with the gratitude journal, awe and gratitude. Wow, that's going to be really powerful. You can create an awe portfolio, so gathering together photos or objects that represent the most powerful experiences of awe that you've had in your lifetime, and actually taking the photographs when you're there can actually help to lock that experience into your memory. So I think personally I'd rather just experience the moment, but you can do both. Other people create an awe playlist. So again, just gather perhaps a note of all of the various things you can find out there on the internet and on media, which help put you in front of experiences of awe. So loads and loads of videos online. I mean, I just love things like sort of ocean videos or nature videos or time-lapse videos or space videos, but also music, talks. Some talks will just get you absolutely inspired by awe. Even movies, there are some movies which help to bring a feeling of awe to what you're watching. And perhaps watching someone doing something very, very skillful can also give it a sense of awe. For other people, they might want to read, so poems, sacred texts, or art can all start to connect you into, tune you into the same thing. And the big thing that people say is go for a walk in nature. So your lake, the trees. The Japanese have a culture of forest bathing, where they just go and absorb and immerse themselves in the greenery and just allow themselves to be affected by it. For other people, some architecture can be very inspiring too. So going for a walk around a city and looking at the architectural details, or inspiring buildings or churches or historic buildings, can also be a great place to try and put yourself in the way of actually experiencing those moments of awe. So those are some of the small everyday things that anyone can do. And I'm sure there's lots more as well.
Well, what a wonderful practice that you've introduced us to. So we're going to wrap it up here. And I understand you've got a program where you work with people. So you kind of mentioned that at the beginning. Did you want to go into that a little bit more?
Sure, yeah, thanks. So I focus on burnout that I work with people, and I've got a 12-week online program called Banish Burnout, which takes people through a fairly systematic journey, starting from the very basics that they need to know about burnout and how to start to work with it, what they need at the beginning phase, and then going through a lot of mindset things, emotional things, things to do with the nervous system, how the body works when you're in burnout, and particularly about beginning to incorporate things like experiences of awe, moments of gratitude, mindfulness, flow, because those are the things that start to rewire the brain. And particularly if we are caught up with stress or anxiety, we start to get tunnel vision, then you need something to get you out of it, whilst you're also learning how to build a better foundation for future-proofing your life and getting out of burnout. So there's a run of that starting in a couple of weeks' time on the 14th of August. And will you give the link, or should I say the link, or what would you like to do there?
The link will be in the all the information, yeah.
The other thing that I have, I've got a free checklist for the top 10 signs of burnout. So if you would like that, again, Denise has the link.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Great. Are there any final words that you can share with the audience of how to reduce their stress and avoid burnout?
I think the most important thing is to notice when it's starting to creep up on you. As you said at the very beginning, we often just don't notice because we're so focused on getting to where we need to get, finishing the job we're trying to finish, and then we just don't notice how our body is actually starting to fade and flag. So please stop every now and again. Close your eyes, take a breath, notice how you're feeling, what you need right now to help yourself recharge. That way, if you're doing it as you go, you're less likely to get the worst effects of burnout.
Well, thank you so much for the information. I'm sure our audience will benefit from it. So thank you for listening. Just a final note, if you're struggling with burnout or chronic stress, I have free resources such as a podcast, Facebook support group, my blog. To get these free resources, please visit my website at www.balance-me.ca. Now, this is Denise Eckert signing off, and contact me if you're looking to create a happier, more balanced lifestyle today.